Before Legos stirred awake, before buses coughed smoke into the morning air, before Danfo horns pierced the silence, Julian Cole stood alone on the balcony of his 20-story penthouse. The sky was pale gray, stitched with the faint glow of dawn, but his chest felt heavier than the city smog. He had returned to Lagos the night before without warning. No press, no chauffeurs, no corporate aides. Only silence. Silence and a locked heart. From the outside, his life was a parade of triumphs. Tech investments in Silicon Valley, hotels in Nairobi, oil blocks in Abuja. But inside, loneliness rattled through him like loose coins in an empty tin. He touched the railing, cold and damp with night rain. His breath made small clouds. Down below, the city stretched, hungry, alive, unforgiving. He turned back into the apartment, its silence pressing against him. No laughter, no half-empty tea mugs, no slippers by the door. He was about to head toward his room when a sound stopped him. Low at first, then sharper. A groan. A cry of pain. His body froze. The noise was coming from his master bathroom. When Julian pushed the door open, the sight stunned him. A young woman lay on the marble floor, drenched in sweat, clutching her belly. Her wrapper was torn, her breath sharp, her face twisted in agony. His billionaire's bathroom, where chrome taps gleamed and imported tiles shone, had become a battlefield of life and blood. And she, a stranger, was giving birth there. For a moment Julian forgot who he was. Billionaire, investor, mogul. None of it mattered. In front of him was raw life, raw pain, and something deep in his chest cracked open. Julian had not always lived like this. He grew up in Ajigunle, one of Lagos's crowded quarters. A wooden shack, a leaking roof, a mother who worked 3 shifts selling bread by the roadside. His father had vanished before he could walk. He remembered hunger, the kind that made you watch your neighbors cook beans and imagine the smell filling your own pot. His schoolbooks lived in a torn nylon bag. His uniform smelled of smoke because his mother ironed it under a pot of boiling water. Yet she always smiled. "Julian," she would say, "life is not about where you sleep tonight. It is about where your soul refuses to sleep forever." That sentence became his engine. When she died of untreated pneumonia, because the clinic demanded money they didn't have, Julian swore never again. He left Ajigunle at 17, working night jobs, coding in internet cafes, sleeping under desks. From there his rise was ruthless. He built apps, sold them, invested, multiplied. The shack boy became the billionaire. But wealth built on scars often leaves them unhealed. Years later, in Holy Cross Cathedral on Lagos Island, on a rainy Sunday, Julian first noticed her. Ruth. She wasn't singing loud, nor wearing bright clothes. Her wrapper was faded, her slippers thin. But her eyes, clear, steady, unafraid, caught him. When the hymn book slipped from her hand, Julian picked it up. Their fingers touched. A brief spark. She whispered, "Thank you." Her voice trembled, but her gaze held. For Julian, it was the first time in years he felt seen, not as an empire, but as a man. From then on, he found excuses to see her. A shared bus ride after service. A gift of bread. She laughed easily, a sound Julian had long forgotten. They met under the mango tree, near her mother's compound. She was studying nursing but working nights at a pharmacy. She believed in healing, even when the world broke you. He was drawn to her humility, her courage. But not everyone was blind. One evening Mama F., a neighbor, pulled Ruth aside. "Be careful, my child. Gold that shines too bright can burn your hand." The words lingered like smoke. Still, Julian pressed on. He promised Ruth stability, a future. But at a corporate party in Victoria Island, Ruth overheard his colleagues mocking her. The billionaire and the pharmacy girl. She's just a story he'll outgrow. Julian, drunk with pride, did not defend her. He even laughed, just once. But that once was enough. Ruth's hands trembled, her vision blurred. The music swelled, but all she heard was betrayal. She left. That night, she didn't return his calls. Weeks turned into months. By the time Julian realized, Ruth was gone. And now, 2 years later, she was in his bathroom, bleeding in labor alone. Julian acted fast. He called emergency lines, wrapped her in towels, held her hand as she screamed. He whispered, "Hold on, Ruth. Please hold on." When paramedics arrived, He followed them to LUTH hospital. There, truths unfolded. Ruth had hidden her pregnancy. She had refused his money, his empire. She had worked until her body gave out. Julian sat in the cold corridor, his head in his hands. For the first time, he felt powerless. But Julian was a fighter. He made quiet moves, selling shares, redirecting investments, setting up a foundation for women like Ruth. No press release, no headlines. This was not about empire. This was about redemption. At the shareholders' meeting in Eco Hotel, his rival Toby mocked him for losing focus. But Julian stood tall. He unveiled new strategies, investments in hospitals, affordable housing, education funds. Not empire building, but life building. The board was stunned. Investors turned to him. Toby's greed collapsed under its own weight. Julian's victory wasn't loud. It was dignified. Meanwhile, Ruth survived. The child, a girl, was small but breathing. Ruth named her Hope. Julian visited often. Not with lavish gifts, but with presence. He read to Hope, brought food, washed dishes. He sat quietly, learning to listen. Ruth began to see not the billionaire, but the boy from Adjugunal who once carried books in a torn nylon bag. Toby's empire crumbled. He had wealth but no trust, no love. Alone in his mansion, he drowned in emptiness. Julian, meanwhile, was finding something money could never buy. Months later, Ruth, holding Hope, walked with Julian to the old church. The cracked cross still stood. There, Julian introduced them to Father Michael, the priest who once gave him free bread after Mass. They prayed, not for riches, but for peace. The sun broke through stained glass, lighting their faces. Julian touched Ruth's hand, not as a billionaire, not as a savior, but as a man learning to heal. And for the first time in decades, his chest felt light. The boy from Adjugunal had conquered the world, but that morning in Lagos, he learned that true victory was not wealth, not empire, not applause. It was the quiet redemption of a heart, the fragile cry of a newborn, and the chance to begin again.